order for February 1st. Is there a motion on tonight's agenda?
I'll make a motion to adopt tonight's agenda for the February 1st City Council work meeting.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion? Seeing none. Jack, could you take roll call vote, please?
Councilman Harrington,
Aye.
Councilperson Mundell,
Aye.
Councilperson Beck,
Aye.
Councilperson Urkel,
Aye.
Mayor Voss.
Aye, then that motion passes. We've got 6 items on the agenda for tonight. So hope we'll have keep the discussions moving along. First tonight, we have Lyda Bannock again with us and discuss the Human Resources Support Report. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, so as all of you know, I completed an investigation, and the point of the discussion tonight is to not get into any specific personnel matters. But it identified that there were some inefficiencies within city departments with how human resources matters are handled in 2 realms. Number one, with employees not knowing directly where to make or issue concerns. And number 2, making sure that those concerns that they have get investigated completely and handled appropriately. And so I think that there is a need that came out of that for additional human resources support within the city. So I think that what we were going to talk about tonight is kind of what that might look like. If you guys have any specific questions about options that might be possible. So I work with, Eckberg Lamberts as a firm works with a significant number of cities ranging in size from the size of East Bethel and much larger as well. You don't often see in cities of the size of East Bethel, somebody designated, a human resources professional designated. But what you do often see is like an assistant city administrator or something of that sort that would handle a lot of these kind of or assist at least in these HR functions. Here we have Mr. Davis, and we also have Mike, and I can't say his last name. I apologize if somebody wants to jump in with how it's pronounced, who does more of the payroll side of things, I would say. Do you guys have any specific questions? And again, remember, we're not jumping into any specific personnel details.
Lyda, this is Jack. Are there any consultants that actually do this like on a part-time basis? And is that another option that can be considered?
Yep. So the first option is kind of, an assistant that could help with that, as potentially perhaps other issues as well. The other is, yes, there are consultants that provide kind of like fractional HR services where they could be a designated point person and act in an HR capacity. They could do investigations, they could have those discussions. They could be a reporting person. That is absolutely another option. I'm not aware of any. My role is as an employment attorney, private businesses, public businesses. I haven't seen any public businesses using kind of that consultant support, but I don't see a reason why that couldn't happen.
Suzanne.
Well, I don't think we need to hire somebody. I think the people that are doing the HR stuff now are paid to do that. My thinking is that the people who are doing it need to be trained on the proper procedures, because I'm kind of have the feeling from everything that's transpired that nobody was properly trained in all the aspects of human resources. So I'd be for sending our people to training, or bringing in somebody to get all the systems in place, on maybe for a month at the most, I think, to develop the handbook and the policies and the kinds of things that human resources do. Because once systems are in place, things tend to flow pretty well. But I think we've just lacked training, lacked policy, lacked holding people accountable in the past for actions, and things were able to spiral. So that's my take on this whole thing. And if anybody else has something else, I'm free to listen, but that's what I thought.
Go ahead.
Chili.
I have to agree with Suzanne. I mean, I work for the school district, and there, I see the need for a human resources department. But if there is someone, like Suzanne said, that could come in and do some training and get maybe a workbook in place, or some sort of just a human resources, get people trained, I think would be wonderful, instead of hiring somebody full-time or even part-time for the year or whatever, for only 9 employees.
And just to speak a little bit to that training component, that fractional HR consultant could act, and I have another private business that's using that right now. They actually came out of another employment investigation where they needed additional HR support. So that consultant is coming in and training to bring the organization up to speed with an intent that they can discontinue services. That all is pending on workload availability, and which likely isn't a discussion for tonight, but what is the capacity with Mr. Davis? What is the capacity with Mike with regards to those concerns and learning those additional pieces?
And that'd be my concern is, for certain Jack, in his role as city minister, is he's had a full plate for quite a few years on this, and Mike, we talk about Mike Jaworski, and he as well, and so if this is, if this need takes more than 6-8 hours a week of attention, which is pretty reasonable, that's a big chunk out of their current duties that now we got to find another way to get it done. So.
And in the other cities that I'm working with, it would be common to have somebody else assist that are similar size. It would be common. The city administrator isn't doing this on their own, even with somebody else assisting with the payroll component. And in my investigation, granted, I didn't dig a ton into workload and availability, but my understanding from that investigation was that employees are nearing capacity or exceeding capacity.
So they could have like a part-time person come in to help out.
That's an option.
Okay.
As a consultant, yeah.
The League of Minnesota Cities has a HR reference manual. Has that been studied and utilized at all for our city? I mean, we could start small.
I think that the issue here isn't having the policies in place. It's being able to actually have the time to manage and hold employees accountable. That's the other aspect of this, is making sure that the city is running smoothly by all the employees being accountable to their job positions. And I think that there has not been enough time. I don't think it's a policy issue. I think it's an on the grounds having enough time to deal with HR issue.
And just so we're clear, I mean, we're kind of been focused on the office staff and kind of the more recent events. But, you know, we also have, a large staff at maintenance. And although they're volunteer and part-time, we have 30 plus firefighters that are employees of the city as well. So, I mean, we have 50 employees, so it's not, you don't think of that way, but in terms of these HR issues, they come up. So
Doesn't the fire department have somebody that comes in and does training on either HR or discrimination training or something? I know when I was at one of the meetings years ago, Tim, you'd be more familiar. I thought they had somebody come in and it was a nightly session that they had somebody come in, review the handbook or something. And it was just a yearly thing that they had somebody come in and so everybody knew.
Tim, can you comment on that, or?
They've had somebody in the past, but I don't know if it's really HR. I think it's more to do with, some other things like harassment and things like that. So,
Yeah, along those lines.
yeah. And it's just a real general thing.
Brian, once a year, and it's usually in January, at the beginning of the year, fire department has a person from either one of our consultants we use for our safe assurance contracts, or other speakers that come in and address the issues of sexual harassment and hostile workplace environments. But it's just generally kind of an overview of, what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. As far as specific training, it's really not that. It's just a general overview of policies regarding hostile workplace and sexual harassment.
And those would be, I presume, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but those are the kind of trainings that employees are supposed to have on the employee level. That's not a management level training. That's talking about how you treat your coworkers and the community you interact with.
That's correct.
Yeah, Jack, they have it in March. It's called Respectful Workplace.
Oh, that, even though they only address the employees and not management training for HR, that may be an idea to bring in, because if you can stem the problem at the source, so the employees don't act out of hand or however inappropriately, then there's not as much AR issues to deal with. Just my thought.
Again, I think Lyda mentions it's not so much the fact that the city doesn't have the policies in place, is the fact that there isn't a point person for the employees to go to, as that advocate liaison, kind of position, and then that person, applying it uniformly across the city, across our whole city staff, and so, if we, back to the idea of training some on our staff right now, I don't think any of our senior staff are really in that position just because of workload. And I'm not sure where it fits in with job descriptions, but I'm fairly sure that's not specific. So it'd be a change in its own. Not to mention you'd have to get someone trained. And and this is also, I know for Brian Shelley, just coming on this year, this is also kind of fitting in line with some of the discussion we've been having over the past 2 years at the finance committee about the fact that, our office staff is getting busy and time. I know finance has talked about, and so by having that, assistant city administrator position, that has all the HR functions within that position. And now we're addressing two matters, you know. But I think what's really important to come out of this discussion is that we don't want to come out of this discussion not doing anything. You know, I think if we would have had some more human resources support for our staff, you know, last year, years before, you know, we likely could have avoided, you know, the issue with the departure of our technician last fall and all the issues that went with it. Because I think a lot of that could have been prevented if we would have had and implemented, you know, some better response to, you know, personnel issues. And we know from reading the investigation report that, you know, this isn't the only, it's not an isolated matter. So, you know, what came out of it, we maybe could have prevented that departure, and we lost a good employee because of that. So.
Yeah, I agree with what Mayor said. I think that something should come out of this, and some change in some capacity needs to happen. And that's from me being an employment attorney and my experiences with other cities and private businesses, and just knowing now. And I mean, this isn't just related to the past year or two either, as we're finding.
Yes, my fear, if we don't make a change, this is just going to happen again. And, you know, we don't want to happen to our staff. So. So tonight, so I guess for tonight, unless we want any more, Brian, you have something?
Well, having suggestions, I'd say at the very least reviewing some of this stuff. People were confused about what to do. And there's some other issues, so at the very least, we need an updated handbook that's simple to understand, that is yearly reviewed and signed off by the employees, that they understand it so that they know where to go. And of course, we need to figure out something for training for either administrator or somebody. But I think at the very least, we need to reduce the confusion of the employees.
We had at one time discussed forming a personnel committee. Is this something we'd want to implement fairly soon at this time to discuss some of the alternatives for addressing this situation?
Well, it's not going to get solved overnight, so we'll probably have to do something along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, we had those kind of discussions as a means to give the staff, you know, that point, that means to discuss it, you know, because we don't have that HR person. So, and that's something we can do in the interim, in the short term. You know, it's fair. Right, and even from that, I mean, we can have that as a discussion of what we do from a staff level. I mean, it's going to be important to keep this discussion going. You know, we're going to be heading into looking at the 2022 budget fairly soon too, sooner than you think. So, so having a direction by then is going to be important. So can you? We discussed a little bit about that personnel review committee. How do you think that would be structured?
Yeah, so there are the benefits of having a personnel review committee. You could have these kind of discussions of thoughts of you know, how you want to handle these matters. You could get ideas and throw things around that aren't so you can have discussions where you're not implicating needing an open session to have an open meeting to have those discussions. where you can discuss exactly this, throw around, amongst the small number of people, talk about what would be the costs associated with perhaps hiring somebody, what would be the costs associated with a consultant versus an employee, and then, bring those ideas to the group at large. A lot of people use personnel committees in a capacity where they would have authority to make decisions. So like when we dealt with personnel matters in the past, or when we have dealt with them in the past, we've had to go into closed session. And as we all know, there are limited abilities to do that. Having a personnel committee would avoid, if there's a personality committee who can make employment decisions or decisions on departure agreements, things like that, you wouldn't have to meet all of us as part of an open session meeting. But I don't think the city was interested in that kind of a personnel committee.
For council, does that sound like we can have Lyda and Jack put together a framework for that and bring that back to council and talk to council about the structure of that?
Yes, I would agree.
Is
I
Okay.
agree.
So I think,
if we're looking at a smaller subset, are there individuals with particular interest in participating on that committee?
well, I think maybe what we can do is for you to work with Jack and come up with a proposal. There'll be 2 members from the city council, but who else from staff would form that committee, and then kind of framework, and then, have it on a council agenda. Then we can talk about, what council members to be on that committee and
Yeah.
talk about it more in detail. And it gives us time to think about it too before then. So,
Sure.
okay.
Would you want to schedule that for the February 22nd council meeting?
Unless you can do it earlier. What's the next council meeting?
A week from today, February the 8th.
Is that too quick?
I
You
don't
can get it
know.
done by, you can get it done by then, have it next week. So,
Okay. Lida, what's your schedule look like for a quick call tomorrow or Wednesday?
Oh, I'm open, certainly.
Okay. Just give me a time that's best to call. Give me an email and we'll get together and see what we
Okay,
can come up with.
sounds good. Once we're done here, I'll send you an email.
All right. Thank you.
are there any other questions for Lyda tonight?
Thank you
Alright.
for doing all this, Lida.
Yeah, of course, of
Yes, thank you.
course. Would you like me to stick around for the remainder of it? It's my understanding that normally, for the remainder of your work meeting tonight, it's my understanding that, do you always have council participate?
No, we don't. Jack, is there a reason for Lyda to stay on?
If she is willing to, what we might want to do is switch the order of the agenda and discuss the code enforcement issues in case there's any legal questions on those. It might be good to have her around to answer any questions that relate to that matter. So what I would suggest is that we reverse the order of the agenda and have the code enforcement discussion next and then go to the comp plan.
And I'm happy to stick around too. I didn't mean that as a attempt at escape.
Let him out. Thank you.
Okay, well, let's do that. So is there anything more on the human resources issue? Okay, if that, we will skip number 4 and go and come back to 4, but we'll go right to number 5, the code enforcement report.
Stephanie, do you want to introduce this one?
No, it's my understanding Aaron's gonna do that.
Okay, if you just give us just a quick overview and then Aaron can go into that, please.
Oh, yeah, so what the city's been doing is we've been talking about some of the ongoing non-compliant issues within the city, ones that we do need that we feel need to be taken care of, and ones that we've talked to, some council members and even, some of the business owners out there. And so, what we've done is we've made a list of some of the, significant non-compliant, properties out there, and Aaron will give you a brief overview on what's been the issue with them.
Do you want me to pause in between each property so that they can be discussed individually on a case-by-case basis? Or do you want me just to go through the write-up and then discuss as a whole?
I think it probably makes more sense to go through one at a time, so everyone gets the questions straight.
Okay, so the first property that is in significant violation, I'm sure you're all aware of the issues at All Appliance. We've been dealing with John since I started. He's the owner of All Appliance, and the CUP was issued back in 2011 with under the premise that all recyclable materials would be stored inside of roll-offs and semi-trailers, which he signed in the application, and it's also an MPCA requirement for recycling centers. Several correction notices have been sent not only by code enforcement, but also through the fire department. And the property owner is now insistent that he is not required to store them in roll-offs or piggyback containers because it was not written into the CUP. So the current CUP violations were the exterior storage of roll-off containers. He's also non-compliant for signage, including permanent and temporary signage, which is the first condition. The next is exterior storage must be an accessory use to the approved and permitted use of the property. So it was never meant to take over the entire use of the property, which is condition 5. Exterior storage is limited to 50% of the rear yard, which is condition 6. The site plan that was submitted with the application is included in the packet. Newly delivered recyclable materials must be placed within a screen enclosure within 12 hours of delivery, which is condition 8. Presently, the recyclable materials have been sitting out for several days. Semi-trailers must be unloaded and removed from the site within 10 days of drop-off, which is condition 9. Aerial photos show that there are semi-trailers that have not moved in over 3 years. A maximum of 20 roll-off containers and 4 railroad or piggyback containers may be stored on site, which is condition 10. On occasion, it's been double that. And the property owner must provide 5 parking stalls, one of which is accessible. Presently, all of those parking spaces are being taken up by commercial vehicles and employee vehicles, which were intended to be stored behind the screen enclosure. If the property owner does not bring the property into compliance, City Council may want to consider revisiting the CUP to determine if the next step in the process, which may be adding conditions or starting the revocation process. Staff will continue on our present trajectory for code enforcement, which I believe within the next few weeks we'll be sending it to the attorney's office for criminal prosecution and being addressed through the Anoka County court system.
Is that it for that one?
Yes.
Any questions from council on this item? Shelley?
I noticed, because I apologize, I'm new to this, but on page 29, the proposed use of the property, and then it continues to page 30, he says, we will keep everything that is stored outside in a roll-off, sea container, or semi-trailer, except for the vehicle's trailer, blah, 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 blah. So, is that part of his application, or was that just I promise you I'll do this, but it's not a legal binding paper?
That was submitted as a portion of his application. That was his write-up for what his intended use of this property was. And it was submitted to council back in 2011. And that was actually a part of the council packet that was used to approve his conditional use permit.
Okay. Thank you.
Suzanne?
Did, he denies that those requirements are in the CUP. Did you guys show him where it is actually in the CUP, where he's required to keep everything inside?
Yes, we have discussed it with him numerous times, and he is insisting because it wasn't written explicitly as a condition that he is not obligated to fulfill that. However, in this last week, within those emails that he sent that I attached, he actually led us to the specific Minnesota statutory rule where he is required to keep those in there. It's a state requirement, not just a city one.
Okay. So the next step is you're taking him to court? Is that what I understood?
He's been given 2 years worth of notices and staff attempting to work with him. So at this point, it will go into citation. However, the established citation process is only about 6 weeks because we have the 15 days in between each. So it may be 2 months maximum, but after that, it would be remitted to the city attorney.
Okay, and then what happens? What, is there any chance the court would side with him?
It's very unlikely considering that he is in blatant non-compliance with our statutes. Lyda would likely be able to answer this more correctly, but this, with it being it's an environmental issue, and the Minnesota Supreme Court actually recently kind of slapped White Bear Lake on the wrist for not protecting their natural resources with the state of the property and just the disarray, the oil in the ground. This is becoming a very large environmental concern. So I personally wouldn't think so, but Lyda, from a legal standpoint, what would you think?
Yeah, I,
Okay, thanks.
oh, sorry about that. I obviously am not as privy to the situations and circumstances and haven't reviewed all of these documents in detail, but what you have indicated, based on what you have indicated today, it seems like I would agree with your assessment, Aaron.
Any other questions on this matter? Okay, Aaron. I'm sorry, Brian.
Oh, okay. I don't see the point of any more conditions to it if he's not following anything right now anyways. And if he's already in violation of the MPCA requirements, if the MPC would be notified of these violations, would they have any more teeth than the city to get these changes done?
It kind of depends because they're the ones who are signing off on his hazardous waste material application. They've approved it based on the condition or what he's telling them he's doing. So
Have they actually came out?
Not yet. I have contacted the MPCA. I also contacted the county. They have certain abilities in cases like this, and actually I have been in contact on a more federal level with some EPA representatives who are interested in taking a look at the site because it may also be in violation of some of their requirements as well.
Okay.
Anything else on this one? Hey, Aaron, what's next?
All right, so the next is that the Southern car dealership at 18355 Highway 65. It's been a couple of different auto dealers since I started in 2018. But presently there's an unlicensed auto dealer operating from this location. They do most of their sales online and they procure their vehicles from through auctions, I believe. There's no record of registration with the city of East Bethel or the state. The city has sent multiple notices to the property owner since November of 2018, informing them that salvage and storage of inoperable vehicles is not allowed. In the past, the tenants spoke with staff regarding vehicle repairs, at which time they were informed all vehicle repairs need to be within the structure. However, the structure is currently inaccessible due to the number of vehicles parked around the outside, and it appears vehicle repairs are now happening outside. Failure to comply with the violations could lead to recommendation to revoke. If there is no actual CUP for this property, I apologize. The present violations are junk vehicles and salvage, non-compliant signage and illegal signage, automotive work, building maintenance and substandard structure needs to be addressed, and then the vehicle dealer's licensure. I know that in the past, the city council approved the use of abatement for public nuisances, and it hasn't been the case in present years. I am not sure where the city would stand on that, but authorizing staff to have inoperable vehicles towed at the owner's expense and possible condemnation of the substandard structure on the property. We have been working with the Minnesota Department of Public Health and Safety for driver and vehicle services for this as an unauthorized dealer that was part of code enforcement process on this particular property. The next code enforcement for this particular property is going through the administrative citation process and then remitting it to the attorney for criminal prosecution.
So as it stands, they have no CUP and no authorization to do a business, perform as a business as it is?
It is a legal non-conforming use. There has been a car dealership there since before 2007 when that ordinance went into effect.
But
Oh, sorry, Brian.
it's okay. So they don't need a CUP for it. Okay, the next question, you say that they're selling on the internet or primarily on the internet?
That was what we were told in a staff meeting. Colleen and I actually met with them very briefly. It was probably about 10 minutes. And time she let them know that they did need a city license. And then we received an angry phone call from the property owner saying that there had been a dealership there for a while. I think there was a miscommunication because we always have required a city dealer's license from what I understand. So there was a bit of a miscommunication there, but we did let them know that salvage cannot continue.
Okay, don't we have a separate code for internet auto dealerships?
Yes. They still require a city dealer's license and they have to be registered with the state.
So no matter what, they need a dealer's license to be registered,
Yes,
which they currently are not.
correct.
Okay, those are my questions.
Shelley.
I had called that dealership at about 4:30 this afternoon. His first question to me was, how did you get this number? And I says, well, from the number on the sign on top of your building. He says, oh, I pretended I was looking for a car for my daughter. And he said that they do mainly wholesale. They get new cars every week. And he said something about auctions, that they participate in auctions. So I don't know if any of that information is helpful, but that's what I got. And no, I'm not buying a car.
Say, Aaron, did you say you did talk to the owner of the land?
I haven't. It's Dave Carlson. I know that a lot of this had been discussed when Colleen was still there, and I know that Stephanie has talked to him briefly on about other matters as well. Other than that, we do send the notices directly to him as well, so he is aware of the issue.
Okay, because I just want to know if he realizes that the mess he's got there.
We've got 6 companies received the notices, so other than, I mean, past that, he hasn't reached out to talk to us about resolving the issue.
Dan,
I have a question because this says, it appears vehicle repairs are happening outside. Is it a fact they are happening outside or is it an assumption they are happening outside? That's my first question. And then I guess I'm wondering, why is the signage illegal or non-compliant? And what is substandard about the structure? Specifics. Thanks.
Okay, so the automotive work happening outside, I have not personally seen it. However, having an engine block on the ground, I would infer that they are doing the work because they are removing pieces of the vehicles and they're strewn about the parking area. The substandard signage, they have an excessive number of signs on the property. From what is allowed by code, they're only allowed to have 2 signs. They've got probably about 8 out there right now. They don't have permits for any of them. And they've added new signage since without permits, like since the new dealers moved in there within the last year. I apologize. What was you had a third question?
you're on mute, Suzanne.
Sorry, thanks. What is substandard about the structure? Sorry.
Oh, so the building itself is fairly old. I believe it was built in the early 70s. And from what I understand, based on inspections done by Mark as well as our building inspectors, there is substantial wear on the building to the point where it is likely not safe for entry. But also within our public nuisance and our building maintenance code, we have standards for roof repair and siding and peeling paint. The building has not been maintained to the Minnesota Uniform Building Code. So the building itself would be considered a public nuisance if they do not bring it up to code, if they don't repair it.
Okay, any other questions on this item?
Oh, I have one more question. What does abatement mean? What does that mean for the city to have the abatement?
So council could require abatement of the nuisance, which would mean that we would either have we would hire a company, like a tow company would come in and tow all of the cars that don't work and put them somewhere for storage. And then those costs would be assessed to the property owner either on their taxes or we would recover those through other means.
Well, how would you make sure the cars aren't working? Because, I mean, unless they don't have an engine or tires or something, but.
Our code has a very specific definition of inoperable vehicle. So basically, if it's unlicensed, if it's clear that the vehicle would be unable to be driven legally on the road. So if most of the vehicles that are on the property are unlicensed vehicles, all of the license plates are out of date. So that in and of itself would be grounds. However, I feel in this instance, more of the ones that it's missing the front half of the vehicle. There are several partial vehicles parked on this lot, and that is the biggest concern right now.
Yeah, I could understand that, but just because if he's getting them from auction and reselling them, obviously he needs a license, but if he gets that and he still has those cars that are unlicensed, I would expect they would be that way till they sold, wouldn't you, or am I wrong?
So that's more of a state requirement. I do know that dealers are able to buy special licenses for that.
Shelley, you had a question?
No, I was just gonna add that because my husband drives by there every day. Numerous occasions they've had over half the vehicles with their hoods up and battery chargers on or whatnot. So I am guessing that the vehicles are pretty much junk.
I'll agree with Shelley. I've been by there once or twice a week and it's car hoods up, flat tires, car parts all over the place. So a lot of them cars aren't working, probably most of them.
It's a disaster and it's an eyesore for our community, I think.
Has staff personally met with both the business operator and the property owner at the same time to discuss these issues? Or
We
it's
have-
just letters just been mailed out?
We've not been able to get them into the same place at the same time. And honestly, since meeting with Colleen when she was still there, I have not personally been able to get back in contact with the business owner.
Okay, I would. Yeah, I would just extend the olive branch once more just to talk with them, say this is what we're gonna do, we're gonna bait everything's gonna get towed. If things aren't brought up to code, if you don't get your license, if et cetera, et cetera. Just a thought.
Aaron, what's the plan next step?
So on this step, we have a final notice that needs to go out. Because every time we update the requirements, like anytime there's a new code enforcement issue, we have to send a new first notice for that one. And so they go back out. So then it'll be citations, which will go to the property owner, because by state requirement, it has to go to the property owner. With the citations, I've been drafting a more personalized code enforcement letter for businesses because we don't want to be I'm not trying to alienate businesses, but we do need this fixed. So I have a more personalized letter that is requesting a meeting with them. I've been setting this up for all of the commercial code enforcement, requesting that they come in and meet with staff to come to an understanding or to try and kind of discuss it in person because it's hard over letters. But then, with this, it will go through the code enforcement or the administrative citation process, and then with that, it would go to court.
Trying to get that meeting.
Yeah.
Well, I would agree. I would agree. About the appearance. I mean, this is literally the first business that drivers see coming from the south. And it's not a great first impression. So, Tim?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, Steve. Somewhere down the line, that land on the east side is gonna get developed, and I don't think anybody's gonna wanna look at a junkyard out their front window or something like that, so. That's something that I think we gotta clean up.
Any other comments?
Just with this particular location, I know no matter what business operator goes in there for 15, 20 years, past 20 years, it's been an issue that's been trying to be solved. And I know several other steps have been taken to get to this point, but if this is the way that the property owner's got to rent out to the clientele and allow his property to be subpar, then obviously some actions have to be taken. So he takes it seriously.
What's next?
Okay, the next location is 1425 Sims Road. The location was formerly known as Lynn's Grocery. And at that time in the 80s, a CUP was issued to allow up to 15 used vehicles to be sold on site at any given time. Recently, the property owner has expressed interest in resuming auto sales. The CUP has minimal requirements for the used car lot. If the property owner resumes car or auto sales, city council may want to consider additional conditions or modifications to the CUP. Most recently, this property is being utilized for another man's treasure, and they moved in November. The site was previously a gas station, and the tanks have not been inspected in the last decade, nor have they been removed, which is a requirement by the MPCA. The business is advertised online as offering pawn services, by which city ordinance requires a city pawn broker's license. The Anoka County Sheriff's Department is requesting that the city move forward with requiring a pawn license for this business. The pawnbroker's license would require that they keep a record of what is brought in and that a legal ID be used to identify the person bringing in the items. The present violations are pawnbroker licensure, abandoned gas tanks, and illegal signage. Several of the signs on the site are within the MnDOT right of way.
Shelley.
I just have a quick question. I've never been in there, but Another Man's Treasure, isn't that where they sell used items? So they must get them from, I mean, how do they obtain the items that they sell? And how is that different than like a pawn?
So online they do offer that they can be sold in the similar means as a pawn shop. Otherwise, they allow people to just come in and leave cash in hand with items. I know that I've never personally been in there. I know that the sheriff's department has expressed that a lot of people have gone in there with stolen goods and just sold items without proof that they are the owner of the items. So that's where this has been a significant issue.
Okay, thank you.
Say, Aaron, is that building up to snuff? Is that, have they done have you guys went in there and looked inside that building?
I know that Mark went in and Nick went in to do a building inspection because it had been abandoned for 10 years. It meets safety requirements presently for inhabitation, but I know Mark had some concerns that needed to be cleaned within the building.
Suzanne.
I just want to say Another Man's Treasure, where it was, worked as a consignment shop. I don't know about the stolen goods, but I'm just wondering, first, have you talked to the owners? Is it the people who are running the Another Man's Treasure that are doing the pawnbroker? Or is it the owner that wants to do the car sales? Or are they all the one and the same? Because I'm feeling like the Another Man's Treasure is leasing that from the owner, and the owner wants to add the cars. So I'm just a little confused on the whole situation there.
The owner was asking about cars in regards to allowing Another Man's Treasure to sell used vehicles from that. The pawn shop aspect is Another Man's Treasure services that they're looking to provide. For the most part, the property owner is not involved, with the exception of asking about the vehicle dealer's license.
Okay, but the owner has to get rid of the gas tanks, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so it's Another Man's Treasure that needs to get the pawn license. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and it was just more of a heads up, because the owner, I've been talking to the owner quite a bit about having car sales there on the property again. And this was just more of an informational thing about that, that if all of a sudden one day you guys drive by and you see cars for sale there, that it is legal and there is a CUP on that property.
Okay. Yeah, I think, you know, seeing it, I mean, it's not a new business in our city, but it's a relocated business within the city, which is a good thing that I think if staff works with them to get them on the right foot, right from the beginning, I think it'll try to work to eliminate future problems that happen. So.
Yeah, that's a comment I have, Steve. I think if you're gonna do it, have the city kind of pursue that pawn license. 'Cause like I said, I've talked to some deputies and think it would be a lot better. I mean, it'd be a lot easier for them, you know. And if there's stolen material or something, or if another man's treasure, they couldn't tell if it was stolen or not, so. But I think I would push that pawn license. You know, and hopefully we can get things straightened out a little bit.
I'd agree. Any other questions on this matter? All right, what's next?
All right, the next location is 1542 221st Avenue. The property is PBS Auto. The conditional use permit issued for this property was for the parking of up to 19 semis. It was issued in 2013. In 2015, staff met with the property owner to address the substandard buildings on the property as well as issues with the screening that needed to be addressed. And to date, none of these buildings that were agreed upon have been removed. This resulted in the property owner utilizing semi-trailers as screening from the residential property to the east. The original conditional use permit is not available, and the only access to the original terms of the CUP are through minutes taken at the Planning Commission and City Council meetings. The first official code enforcement notice was sent to the property in December of 2019, addressing the number of vehicles, screening, and public nuisance. The public nuisance consists of the property as a non-compliant auto reduction yard. The automotive repairs taking place on the property are in direct violation of the CUP, and as well as the hazardous structures on the property. Failure to comply with the violations could lead to recommendation to revoke the CUP from the property or for this property. The violations are vehicles, and salvage, screening, automotive work and repair, and then building repair and substandard structures.
Yeah.
So why is the original CUP not available? And if it's not available, how do you know they're in total violation of it? So that totally didn't make sense to me as I read this. I'm sorry.
The conditions are all laid out in the original city council meeting minutes. This is difficult for me to explain with the CUP missing. However, previous staff had taken it out during their meeting out of the property file during their 2015 meeting with the property owners, and did what they deemed to be an administrative amendment to the conditional use permit, which is not something that is allowable. Only council has the capabilities of doing that. So with that, the original CUP, which had not been county filed at the time, was taken and is now missing.
Without that original CUP, do we have any grounds to stand on?
Yeah, we can still enforce all of the original conditions. It's how city council approved it in 2013, so they are still beholden to all of those conditions.
Why was it not recorded with the county?
At the time, the staff member who was handling the land use applications did not feel it was pertinent to be having some of those agreements county recorded.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on this one? All right, what's next?
All right, so the next one is 18649 Highway 65, which is Universal Trucking. This property is non-compliant with their CUP as no auto body work was to be done at this property. This is a service that they widely advertise. Additionally, the CUP has the condition that all signage and building improvements shall comply with the city code. They've added an illegal structure to the property, which is a manufactured structure with no footings and exceeds the 200 square foot requirement of the building code to obtain a permit for the placement of the structure. They were notified that it needed to be removed by early 2020. However, the structure remains on the property. The city and state require a vehicle dealer's license for sales over 5 vehicles per year. Universal does not have a vehicle dealer's license through the state at this address, nor have they obtained a city license. Failure to comply with these violations could lead to a recommendation to revoke the CUP for this property. The violations are automotive work, illegal structure, and vehicle dealer's licensure.
Any questions for anyone on this? Kind of sounds familiar. All right. What's next?
All right, so then we've got the final property, which is 4631 Viking Boulevard. The residential structure on this property was declared a hazardous structure and public nuisance by City Council in 2009, with the approval of Resolution 2009-33. Shortly after the condemnation resolution was approved, the property was sold to the present property owner. In 2015, the structure was being rented and the renter requested an inspection by the building official for rental ordinance issues. At that time, it was noted there was significant work being done without permits, as well as the structure being unsafe for habitation. The building official red tagged the structure. After notices were sent to the property owner to bring the building into compliance and no permits were obtained, it was remitted to the city attorney. In late 2019, the city was informed by the city attorney that the statute of limitations to address this issue had run out, so the case was dropped by the court. Staff is presently working with the city attorney to obtain an administrative search warrant to continue pursuing this case, as it is a public safety issue. The city was recently made aware that the structure once again has occupants. The administrative search warrant is the next available compliance measure available to the city. Once this is obtained, if the property owner is unwilling to obtain all permits and go through the process of ensuring the residence meets building code requirements for human habitation, City Council may need to consider abatement of the nuisance, which in this case would be demolition of the hazardous structure. With any enforcement action by the city, this person or business in violation is entitled to a hearing before City Council as provided by East Bethel City Code, Chapter 1, Article 10, Section 2-590, Administrative Appeal.
So this, for a couple of us, will remember this. This has been before council in the past. The property owner has pleaded with council, and our direction back then, I'm not sure what year it was, but was to, proceed through the legal channels and get this resolved. It's frustrating, this particular one, because it has been an issue for so long and it's so blatant, the issues there with this property. So, and Aaron's comment, I think Tim will agree too, is this house has been used as a residence for several years now, so very clearly. Suzanne.
Yeah, I have a lot to say on this because I was in that house right after I got elected, but before I took office, because things were going on then. And she spent tens of thousands of dollars on attorney. And then the court case reached its statute of limitation, it expired. She thought it was over. Everybody thought it was over. I know she's feeling like the city has been harassing her. And that her civil rights are being violated. It's a 1870s house, and she said that she tried to work with Nick, and there was conflict there, and she requested to work with a different inspector, and was denied that. Which I think she should have had the right to work with somebody that was more compatible with her personality. I think getting a search warrant for a private residence is outlandish, actually. We could get search warrants for every older home in the city and probably find just as many violations. If you've driven by there, you've seen that the pictures in this book are totally misleading. They're from 2015, and those people that were there were not renters. They were foreclosed on, and she let them stay there for free. That's not renters. But she had to go through an eviction process, and they destroyed the house on the inside, and which led to them going up there and complaining that it was substandard and bad living conditions, which led to the inspection. The picture, the inside of the house doesn't look anything like those pictures. The outside doesn't look like anything like those pictures. It's been painted. I know it's fixed up on the inside. I know that she, yeah, it's actually charming on the looking on the outside. It was painted this last summer. This last year, she sold another house that she owned down on Coon Lake. So I know she spent the whole summer working on that. This resolution that's in here, it's not even signed, but it passed all inspections for it to be sold to her. So it went through the title process and all the inspections that houses get sold. And that was back in 2009 when she got it. There's documents are not in here that she submitted to her by her lawyer that from plumbers and contractors saying the house is structurally sound. She has said she's requested hearings and submitted freedom of information requests on the case before between 2015 and 18, and she was denied, and she showed me proof of that. I mean, she's got I didn't look at it all, but she's got a stack of books, a couple books thick that her and her lawyer have been working on this whole case. Talked about that. She talked to other people. I think this whole thing she's not even in the country right now. And I think she has the right to come before the council with her lawyer and brief her side of the story. I don't think we should decide anything based on what's in this packet, because this packet is absolutely misleading and makes it look like she is absolutely living in a condemned house, and she's not. And that said, how much has the city already spent on legal fees harassing this lady? I mean, from 2015 to 2019, 4 years of legal. This just needs to be done. It's her private residence. It's good. She submitted documents saying that it's legally, structurally sound, and she's not using the city because she feels the city harasses her. So she's using the state and other contractors for the inspections. And I know the inspections for the permits and stuff have to be through the city, but if she's afraid of the city, what recourse does she have? So that's my comment on this whole.
Okay, Shelley?
I've lived next door to this residence now for quite a few years, and before it was sold, my husband and I did go into the residence. We were thinking about buying the property. The house was so destroyed that we wouldn't even go on the second level because we were afraid we were going to fall through the floor. I have seen through the years, with lights on, she doesn't have shades on the windows, whatever. I mean, you can tell she's done a lot of work. As far as the pictures in the packet, yeah, it kind of worries me because they're from 2015, because I'm sure I know she's done a lot more work. I don't know her personally since then, but the only real concern that I have with the property is the electrical. I used to work in the electrical field, and seeing those pictures of the electrical panels and stuff, if she could, submit maybe some updated pictures or something to the city to show that she's in, things are up to code, maybe that might be an option.
She had the state inspector go in there because of the city, and she got it. And there's a number she can call you or email you somebody with the number of that the state uses because the state has electrical inspectors. So I know that was done. So, and I know it passed.
Well,
Let's say,
Jack, what is the history of us trying to inspect that home?
The only time that we were in the home was in 2015. There was a renter or a person, a family living there. They told us they were renters. They told us that they were being evicted. They did have some issues with the house, and I actually went with Mr. Schmitz to do that initial inspection. Those are where those pictures came from. Actually, there's about 100 more photographs. Uh, there were numerous defects in the structure of the house, the electrical work, the plumbing, stair rails, you name it. It was a case in what shouldn't be. But regardless of when the pictures were taken, even if those issues have been rectified, they've been done. All the work has been done without permits. None of it has been inspected as required by city code. And the only way to rectify that would be to allow us to come in, inspect the work, make sure it was okay, and have our inspector do that. Now, if there's a proven issue between the owner and our inspector, we could hire an independent inspector to look at it. But in some cases, the walls may have to be opened up because everything they've done in there, they have never pulled a single building permit. We have no record of any inspection. And our electrical inspections are done by our city electrical inspector. The state gave the city the right to do the electrical inspections 5 or 6 years ago. So we have an independent electrical inspector that does the work. So our city inspectors don't do electrical work. So the issue there is the pictures, and if the work has been done, then all that work's been done without permits and has never been inspected. So that's the other issue.
So there's another issue as far as what needed to be done and what the city is saying needs to be done and what actually needs to be done. Because I was told that it's an 1870 house and the inspector said everything had to be up to modern day code. And that's not exactly true because an old house like that, like the plumbing, would be grandfathered in as long as it's functional.
That's the key thing, Suzanne, as long as it was functional. But they've gone in there and done replumbing, and all the replumbing they've done has not been according to code. And if you look at some of those pictures, you can see the way they've attached some laundry sinks downstairs. They're not vented. They're not connected to a vent stack. Their connections are improper. But those are the issues. Now, if it were all original stuff, then that would be different. But these are all the changes that they've made. Any changes that are made have to be to the current code.
So Jack, my understanding, the broader understanding of why cities do inspections on residential homes is so that things are obviously constructed to code, but that for subsequent owners of those homes, that they know that it was done to code as well. So they're not gonna, the next owner is not gonna be walking into this huge money pit that was done not to code. And if they ever want to do anything, they would have to correct those code violations. Is that not true?
That's correct. The purpose of the codes and the building inspections is number one, to ensure the safety of the structure for the original owner. But like you said too, for any subsequent purchaser, they're going to have the assurance that those things met city code for the building standards at that time.
I don't know about anything that was updated or changed from original, but I know that trying to get everything updated from 1870 code to the modern day code, I think some of the requests were above and beyond what she really required.
That information from Suzanne?
From her. Well, it's my interpretation of what she told me, because she told me that the inspector went in there for one thing and they said that, well, you have to modernize everything. And she was just flabbergasted. My words, not hers.
It's my understanding from conversations with Nick and with Steve, as well as with Jack, that the only thing she was told that needed to be brought up to modern code were things that she had obviously done repair work on. If they were able to tell that she had modified or updated it in any way, that those were the things that she was required to and were listed in all of the code enforcement notices. From what I have read in all of the court documents and stuff that was provided to our attorney, that those were the only things she was ever told that needed permits.
That's right, but she also has provided the city with documents from a licensed plumber and a licensed contractor saying the things were structurally sound. Maybe not inspected by the city, but if they're structurally sound. Anyways, I don't know where we want to go from here, but I think she deserves to write to a hearing, or at least some kind of a meeting with us, whether it's at a closed room or something, before we take any serious actions like a search warrant or a demolition of her house.
And Suzanne, that's why the last statement that Aaron read in the packet gives any person that feels aggrieved by a decision made by any city staff, officials, council members, or commission members has the right to a hearing before council to express her interest on the subject and to appeal to that decision. She does have that right. She's already exercised it one time back, I believe it was in 2017 or early 2018 when she came before the council to address the same conditions. But, you know, that right exists, and I'm sure council would probably invite her again to express those things. But again, it boils down to something that's fairly simple, is that the inspections have to be done by the city or somebody that's approved or delegated by the city. A licensed contractor cannot send in something and say the work's been done according to code, because we can't sign off on that. We've red tagged the structure, and the only way that can be removed is it's inspected by a city inspector or a delegated city inspector.
So it sounds like the discussion, before we have the discussion, we need to know what we're discussing, because the city hasn't been in there 5 years. There's obviously been a lot of changes. And I think having that walkthrough and that inspection is the starting point for the discussion.
Well, I don't know. I just feel like she should be a part of this before we do anything, you know, and like I said, she's out of the country right now. So I think if we could schedule something, which means nobody's there, so there's no worries about anybody.
There are people living there right now.
No, they're not. She's out of the country.
Yes, they have been for many years.
There were people living there last summer. There were people living there last summer, but right now, this winter, she is out of the country with her family. If anybody's there, it's somebody that she has going in to check on, making pipes don't freeze or something like that, but there's nobody living there.
I don't know if she's ever lived there, but I've seen the people who have been living there, so. But we don't need to argue that, because it's still an issue. So, and this has been an issue for way too many years. And it's all surround the fact that this homeowner continues to do work without wanting to get it inspected by the city. And this is not the first property that this owner has had this issue with, so. Shelley.
So let's let her request it, give her a certain amount of time to request a hearing, and let's get a hearing scheduled. That's what I'd say. Let's do that first.
What would the hearing be for, Suzanne?
So she can air her side of the story.
She's done that in court, right? Jack?
No, the court case got dismissed. There was no court hearing.
Aaron, do you know if this owner actually appeared in court?
So it had gone to court and was repeatedly rescheduled. It was one of those, okay, like, I have a number of emails saying that it was getting rescheduled. And then by the time that we got the final rescheduling notice, that was when we were called. So there has not been an actual, like, they haven't spoken in court about this. It was always rescheduled until after the statute of limitations was up.
But she did appeal her case at a city council meeting under that city code statute that I previously quoted. I can look the date up and find that out, but that was probably early 2018 or sometime late 2017.
Shelley?
Back in the day when my husband and I looked at the property, the house was condemned and we were under the assumption that if we purchased the property, that's why it was so cheap. I think it was like $32,000 or something like that. That we were under the assumption that the house would have to be demolished, and that's why we kind of walked away from it, because of the cost of getting rid of the house and the out structures. So I'm guessing that when she purchased it, she had to know that it was condemned already, and that, there was going to have to be significant work to be done. And when you do that, of course, you have to have permits. So I do agree that, she should have pulled the permits for before doing any work. But that's all I have to say. I just know it was condemned before she even purchased it.
I guess my opinion on this is we have outdated information. Before we have any hearing with the property owner, we should have a inspector in there, reevaluate the situation so we know what we're dealing with. So we can be educated, so when the property owner comes and has a discussion with us, we're on the same page. But either way, if work was done without permits, it has to be taken care of.
And Brian, that's why we were seeking as an alternative the administrative search warrant, so we could go in there and do that inspection.
So it'd be nice if the property owner would let the inspectors in and agree to that. So
I apologize if Aaron, if you already said this. Have we done just that? Have we asked to inspect the place?
Not since I was hired with the city.
And maybe perhaps before we institute administrative action, we simply, tell the property what's going on, and we'd like to see the property.
Okay, so would council opinion be that we send an additional notice with a request to allow city staff to perform the inspection under the premise that, I mean, it wouldn't only be the one inspector that she seems to disagree with, because obviously that is not a problem, but he would need to be there because he is the building official. I guess how would council want me to word that, because it is out of the norm, and if this is the case, I would like direction so that we don't exacerbate the situation.
All right, first, like I said, she's out of the country. So I don't know how much time you want to give because I think she's due back till April or May. Second, what was I gonna say? I totally forgot. If that particular inspector has to go, can can I be part of it as an observer?
Well-
Or witness or somebody that, somebody here because
Could-
that's not biased.
Could we, in addition to having the building official out there, also have an independent inspector, say from Rum River Inspecting, accompany our building official out there so that there is a second opinion right there on the spot?
I don't see why that couldn't be arranged. I would think if that was her preference, though, we would be able to back charge her the cost of that, though.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. But this needs to be done soon. Needs to be done in February, needs to be done within the next few weeks.
Yeah,
If she's out of the country, it doesn't really matter. She can still allow access to the home. And in terms of that personnel conflict, if she's not gonna be there, there's not gonna be a conflict with our buildings official, so.
say, I got a question. Stephanie, are you on there?
Yes, I'm on here.
And so she contacted you at all? I've got a letter that she's contacted you about trying to clear up these issues. Has she contacted you at all?
No, I have not talked to her since I've been back with the city.
Okay,
I used to talk
Okay.
to her prior, but not since I've been back.
no, the note I got is she's contacted you lately to straighten these issues out, so I just wanted to.
No,
Yeah.
I have not heard from her.
Okay, okay, well, that answers a lot of questions, thanks.
I think Aaron's still looking for direction here. I would suggest, send a letter out and, if asking for to get together and discuss this, but we need to inspect the property, in the next few weeks. And if that doesn't happen, this is what we're doing next, which is the administrative action.
Okay, I will have that letter in the mail tomorrow, first thing.
Council, do you agree, disagree?
I agree. I also would agree if maybe a council member accompanied the inspector just for maybe her own peace of mind as the homeowner. So there'd be an inspector and a council member out there.
I have no objection. Okay. So Aaron, I think you got direction on that.
Thank you. I can get that in the mail first thing tomorrow.
Is there anything else tonight?
Not on that. The only other thing I've got for you guys is the comp plan update.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the code enforcement report. Unfortunately, these things are taking way too long to get resolved, and hopefully that will change this year. So.
Thank you, Aaron.
Okay, we'll go back now to item 4, which is the comp plan zoning discussion.
All right, and this one is pretty quick. Since the approval of the 2040 comp plan by the Met Council, staff has been working on the required zoning updates, including the creation of an R3 small lot residential zoning district to help minimize nonconformities within the Coon Lake Beach area while maintaining current standards set by the city as used within Whispering Aspen and Viking Preserve subdivisions. The addition of the zoning district is important for compliance with Met Council requirements for our rural residential acreage requirements. And with the removal of the southern portion of the planned sewer and water area and the creation of a Coon Lake land use, the R3 zoning district will also help the city acknowledge problems that are unique to smaller lot sizes, such as septic compliance with well challenges. A comp plan amendment is required to change the land use of two properties on the southeast portion of the southern 2030 MUSA from low-density residential to mixed use for a future PUD that is presently in discussion, which is a possibility once the sewer and water connection is brought to the eastern property line of the Elevage project. Staff is bringing this forward as at the January EDA meeting, there was concern regarding the amount of the available light industrial zoning within the city of East Bethel. Attachment 3 is the EDA agenda item, complete with all attachments for reference. Many of the sites that could possibly be rezoned to light industrial are located within the future growth area land use, which is during initial discussions for the 2040 comp plan. It was expressed that improvements of many of these sites would be most beneficial to the city of East Bethel to be postponed until at a time which city sewer and water is available for maximum utilization of the Highway 65 corridor. This is being brought forward because the land use would also need to be changed within the 2040 comp plan. So while we're already performing a land use update, if council determines that adding additional light industrial, it would be more beneficial for the city to bring it all forward at once.
I have a quick question.
So,
What would the reason, I'm just asking for the, around Coon Lake, the Coon Lake Beach area, and then around by you, Steve. What would the rezoning mean for, exactly for the residents? Because I know a lot of those homes were built way, way, way back, 30s, 40s, maybe before. Some of them were just cabins turned into homes. What does the rezoning mean that for them, what they'd have to do, or what would it mean for them?
Ultimately, it would make things easier for them if they were to do improvements on the lot. We're looking to lessen the side yard setback requirements to 7 feet because that is approximately average of the, like that tends to be the variance request. We're getting a lot of variance requests for setback requests, and a lot of the residences are probably within 5 feet of the lot lines. I know that initially the zoning ordinance had been set at 10 feet there, just because that was a standard throughout the city, but it will help the city be able to work with the residents to build the additions and decks and stuff that they're looking to build, and be able to work with them a little bit easier while still maintaining zoning controls.
Perfect. That makes me very happy. Thank you.
yeah, that particular issue has been around for 30 years, and it's, you know, it's kind of centered around the fact our zoning ordinances are kind of intended for the 2-acre lots that we do now for new acres or for new land, but not the old original ones. And particularly around Coon Lake, there's been just every year there's issues with this. Before we go any further, and I'm remiss, do we need Lina anymore tonight? Can we release her? I think we're good. Lina, thank you very much for being here tonight. You've been very helpful, and we look forward to working with you in the future too.
Sounds good. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
So if there's anything more on the new zoning code issues, Suzanne.
Yeah, I have a question. I would think, and this is just a question, it's not an opinion or anything, but is it not better to have more smaller individual type businesses there rather than big manufacturing businesses? I mean, if you had smaller businesses, wouldn't you have more hookups to the sewer water district? Or am I, or is this gonna be like a wash? And then if we get more manufacturing in here, are there gonna be issues with hazardous waste and pollution and kind of stuff like that that we're trying to eliminate? So those are my two questions regarding this new mixed zoning with industrial.
Well, to begin with, Suzanne, we have approximately 750 acres that are zoned light industrial. However, due to existing uses and split zoning and unavailability of property at this time and wetlands issues, there's only about 53 acres that are currently available. To your question about would it be better to have more smaller ones and larger ones, the size of the building is not the main determinant. It's essentially the number of employees that they have or the number of employees that they can potentially have. So actually, the bigger the building, generally the bigger the sewer access charges we get from those. As far as the pollution questions, they have to, everybody that comes in has to meet a strict set of standards, site plan reviews, MPCA requirements. So I don't think that's a real issue. A good example of that was CST. When they tried to come into the city in 2016, while they met the zoning code description as a permitted use, they did not meet the environmental uses. So we were able to handle that issue from that aspect.
So if a certain company came in, we would research that company and their output of all that kind of stuff before we would say this company is okay.
That's correct. And in places where we have city sewer, then they would also have to get Met Council approval on their discharges to make sure that they met their standards. In cases where there was doubt, we could request that environmental reviews be performed. So we have a number of checks on that to make sure that somebody comes in and not going to do any environmental damage to the city.
Okay, thanks. So those are my only two questions. I wasn't sure about that sewer water hookups stuff.
I think part of the problem is just the label of calling it light industrial. You know, when you say industrial, you think smokestacks and, you know, all the stuff that we grew up with is thinking industrial. It's really more light manufacturing.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's, you know, Blaine's got certain areas, Spring Lake Park's got certain areas where there's light industrial, but they're not very large buildings. They're only 10,000, 20,000 square foot buildings, but they do manufacturing within these buildings. You couldn't tell from the outside, you know, and that's, to me, that's what light industrial is. But the whole CST thing, that was an whole other league, you know, what was being proposed. And you know, I think pretty much everyone else hope, you know, we don't have to deal with something like that again. But that's what, you know, in terms of this light industrial manufacturing is it does bring a lot more jobs because there's usually a lot more employees. You know, it doesn't have a huge footprint most of the time because most of them don't have outdoor storage. But then tax base, you know, there's a lot of tax base there too. So so it's just trying to find that balance. And like Jack said, although it appears that we have a lot of land, there's not a lot of usable land for light industrial right now. So so we've been, you know, planning's been discussing, EDA's been discussing it, staff's been discussing what we do about this. So.
And
Go ahead, Jack.
Going forward with this, we brought this to everybody's attention because this will be coming to council again probably in March when we start trying to finalize and line the zoning up with the comp plan. So we'll hear a little bit more about it then. We just wanted to brief you on some of the things we've been looking at. And if you have any questions or need any more information on that, please don't hesitate to call us.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about the comment about the timing, trying to do this at the same time as we're making these other comp plan changes, and that may be a little aggressive. I think this deserves, you know, the light industrial issue deserves a little more discussion, not just with this body, but just with our community as a whole too. So. I think we need to keep discussing this.
Yeah, I guess my input on light industrial is if we do expand areas, we need a buffer between residential and light industrial. Because we saw, keep referring to the CST case, such the community outpour against it that obviously no one really wants a light industrial or industrial right next to their house. And I can't disagree with that. I don't want industrial built right next to my house. So with whatever expansion of the light industrial, we should keep in mind the distance to residents and have some sort of possible buffer zone.
Stephanie, we have that to some extent in our code right now, correct?
We
Yes,
do
we
as
do.
far as screening goes.
And
Oh.
for buffering too, how far I think that they need to be away from property lines and that sort of thing, yes.
Yeah, I'm not talking just screening. I'm talking buffering, say in a residential development, you'd have your single family houses, then you'd have townhouses, then you have apartments. The townhouses would be the buffer between.
Yeah, that's definitely something to consider on that, so. Anything else on this tonight?
Well, thank you for your guidance.
Well, thank you both. It's been helpful. So what's gonna be the next step on this in terms of council?
Then the next steps will be bringing the comp plan amendment for those two properties within the mixed use, from low density residential to mixed use for Met Council approval, so to send to Met Council, and then we'll be bringing the rezoning to council as well as a zoning update, which is all standard required for the 2040.
And when do you think we will do that?
My goal is before I leave for maternity leave, so by mid-March at the latest.
Okay. Any other questions for Stephanie or Aaron?
It's an aggressive schedule, but I think we could do it.
That sounds like you challenged yourself and Aaron. Okay, great. Thank you both very much tonight. We'll move on to item 6. This is the Bethel Haunted Trails Park.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the December 7th, 2020 work meeting, City Council discussed issues with the City of Bethel relating to their establishment of a Bethel City Park within the City of East Bethel. As a result of the work meeting discussion, council directed staff to meet with the City of Bethel officials to review this matter and return to council a means to satisfy our concerns while still continuing the use of their bike trail system. Staff met with Gingerberg, City of Bethel clerk, and Bethel council person Rich Whittla on December 15th, 2020 to review the matter. As a result of this discussion, the following items were proposed. The City of Bethel would consider removing the existing Bethel City Park sign and replace this with a Bethel Nature Trail sign. The City of Bethel would consider signing a liability waiver or exclusion of liability agreement to protect the City of East Bethel, agree to maintain liability insurance on the property, and defend and indemnify for claims that arise for use of the property. The City of East Bethel would contact the Anoka County Highway Department to inquire as to the directional identification signage on University Avenue for the trail facility that would be consistent with the name change. And the City of Bethel would enter into an agreement, whether part of the above or as another arrangement, as to the maintenance and operational responsibility of the facility. Our city attorney, Chris Nelson, has prepared a draft agreement to address the use, liability, and maintenance issues related to the concerns put forth by the City of East Bethel that are included in attachment 5 of your packet. In addition to the signage and liability matters, the City of Bethel proposed an additional option that would request annexation of 81 acres located in the city of East Bethel into the city of Bethel and agree to a reversionary clause. This property would revert to and be deeded to the city of East Bethel and the annexation become null and void should use of this site ever change from a bike trails trail facility to another use. The city of Bethel was informed that this would not likely be of interest to the city council, but it would be presented to them at this work meeting. At this time, council is requested to discuss the proposals to address this situation and provide any direction or comment to city staff.
Hey, perhaps we want to talk or discuss the annexation potential. I see a lot of shaking heads, in which I figured would be the question, their answer there. So Jack, you sent out a revised agreement.
I did, and essentially, when I had a discussion with Chris, we had discussed the elimination of the word park related to this. My recommendation on this would be to change the word park to facility and then add 2 other small additions to it relating to the signage. Chris said he saw no real concern with this, with the exception that people might think that this was a city of East Bethel Park and maybe call us for issues. I would expect that probably to happen regardless of what we do. However, they do have an existing sign up there that does list the numbers to be called, and they are City of Bethel contacts.
Hey, Suzanne, any other questions?
Yeah, I just don't understand why the signage is so important. Why it has to, we're going through all this to change it and stuff. I mean, it's fine that you're doing it. I just am not understanding the whole reasoning behind it, I guess.
Well, I think the biggest reason is perception of the matter. We're allowing another city to operate a park within our city that follow a different set of rules and guidelines, even maybe maintenance standards. To me, I think this is an issue, this agreement that we're proposing would clarify those things. And I think that's the biggest issue of the whole matter. Plus, the city of Bethel never contacted us in the beginning of this to clarify these things, and we could have worked them out then. They received some advice from their city planner that was contrary to what really has to happen. So that's why we're in this situation. Their city planner is a consultant. He's not a full-time employee. But I think it's the perception of the matter. The city of Bethel's operating a facility within our city with different standards than what we have.
I think part of it too is just to be clear to everyone, this is not an East Bethel Park. As we discussed, I don't know if Brian and Shelley have seen the photos from before, but it's an interesting place and not anything that our city would develop as a park. And so to avoid that confusion, I think it's part of it. Shelley, you had a question?
Yeah, being I'm part of the park commission, so what I'm understanding is Bethel has a park, the Haunted Park, in our city of East Bethel. Who owns the land?
The city of Bethel actually owns the land. They own 81 acres. And they acquired this land sometime back in the 1920s. It's essentially been vacant property for the most part. At one time, a small part of the frontage was used maybe as a city dump. But other than that, it's been vacant for the entire time that they've owned it.
So Bethel owns 81 acres inside of our city, and they're using it as a park facility.
That's correct. It's a trail bike walking facility.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I do have one comment on the agreement. Under number one, use of the park. The city of Bethel may operate a public city park on the properties. Shouldn't the word city be removed or replaced with facility or some other?
Yeah, that, Brian, is one of the things that I'd recommended to Chris is we remove the word park from everything in there and replace it with facility.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm talking about the word city before the park. In that particular line, it says may operate a public city park.
We could take a look at removing that.
Yeah, so I think that's the intent that we're trying to do is get away from calling it a city park. So that was my only comment. Otherwise, it looks pretty good in my opinion with the other changes that you made to it.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, we'll move on. Number 7, the city packet delivery date.
Regular city council meeting dates were changed to the second and fourth Mondays, and the work meeting set for the first Monday of the month by city council on January the 7th, 2019. This change was made to align staff and council schedules and allow more continuous time to address issues and directives from council during the week following those meetings. This change also intended that city council packets would be posted on the website and provided to council on the Wednesday preceding a Monday meeting. With this change, an EDA meetings rescheduled for the third Monday of the month, staff is required to produce a meeting packet every week, except for those months that have 5 Mondays. 2021 has 4 months that have 5 Mondays. With the Wednesday packet submittal deadline, staff has only 2 days after a meeting to prepare, post, and send the next packet to the council or EDA. The Friday date for packet completion has become necessary to allow adequate time to receive packet information from and to accommodate the schedules of the city engineer, city attorney, consultants, agencies for their reports and final research by staff necessary to finish agenda item narratives. Our experience with the Monday meeting dates has shown that to consistently prepare and complete packets requires a Friday packet submission date to council. Even with that Friday date, it can still be a challenge to meet these deadlines. Staff understands the need for council to have adequate time to review the meeting material in preparation for council meetings. If the Friday posting and transmitting of council packets remains in place, staff could send preliminary meeting agendas on Wednesdays to enable council members to call for staff updates or briefing on the agenda reports in preparation. At the January 25th, 2021 council meeting, Councilperson Mundell requested a discussion of the potential of submittal of meeting packets to council on Wednesdays prior to Monday council meetings. This time, staff is seeking direction on this matter from council.
Brian, you brought this up.
Yep. So when I was on council before, meetings were on Wednesdays. We got our packets on Fridays. That gave us adequate time over the weekend, plus 2 to 3 days to review all the information. As we get it right now on Friday evening, we must look at it over the weekend with very little time on Monday to get questions answered by staff or discuss anything or to research any other information. So I'm wondering what happened. Why is it this the practice now? And is there a possible way to get packets out earlier so we have adequate time to review everything?
Jack, Suzanne, I'll get to you. Jack, just I think you touched on it in your demo, but originally when we changed the meeting dates, we were going to get the packets on Wednesday before the meeting.
That's correct. That's what we proposed.
And so why is that changed? Because we don't have council meetings every week.
We have 3 council meetings a month, and 1 EDA meeting a month. So we have, unless we have 5 Mondays in a month, we have consecutive council meetings for 11 or EDA meetings, 11 out of 12 weeks, essentially in a row, or 12 out of 13. So it does become quite a deadline issue. Like we're having a work meeting tonight. Our next council meeting is Monday, so if you want to pack it out on Wednesday, we have to take what's out of this work meeting, what's already being developed in the schedule, and have the packet ready to go in 2 days. Now, there's one item that we're waiting on, two items essentially, that may not even be available until Friday morning. One of them is the bids for the surplus sign, and the other one could be information from the Sunrise River WMO on their budget. So it's a twofold issue. It's allowing staff enough time to prepare it, but as importantly, some of the people that we deal with that we work with closely to get us packet information and do reports, our city engineer, city attorney, agencies that we work with, and consultants sometimes can't meet these very tight deadlines. We could get a packet out on Wednesdays, but it would, in essence, probably be incomplete depending on what's going in there, and we would have to send addendums out in the following days as we receive the information to complete that. We were probably a little over optimistic in our ability to turn this around when we essentially did this. And after a couple of meetings, we found out that the Wednesday dates were just not working to get a complete packet out to council in 2 days.
So-
Personally, I don't have any problem with the timing. What is difficult and challenging and frustrating sometimes is getting a lot of changes to the packet on the Monday of our meeting, and sometimes even in the afternoon, some Monday afternoon. So that's, to me, that's the more difficult part. But
I don't have any issues with the packets now either. I mean, I look at them over the weekend. If I got something Monday morning, I call Jack or I stop in and see him. 2 days is plenty of time for me, so.
Oh, some of us aren't retired.
No, I'm talking the weekend now. You don't work the weekend. You only work Monday through Friday, don't you?
Nope.
for it's 3 days, and so, I mean, I know when a packet's coming, so.
I actually agree because we get it on Friday and sometimes we want to contact some of the people who are associated with whatever is in the packet. And that leaves us Monday to do those phone calls and trying to contact people and get answers to questions to get all sides of a story of a situation. So even if we could get it on a Thursday, I would be ecstatic. Even if we could get most of the packet with the rest of it, knowing that additional information is coming on Monday or Friday or something. So at least we can get some research done. I totally agree with Brian on this one.
Jack, a while back, you were preparing the draft agendas earlier in the week. I mean, is that something we can do? Is get the draft agenda out earlier in the week, so then if there's anything in particular that a council member sees that they want to, research or look into more into, they have that opportunity?
That would not be a problem, and we could get those out on Wednesdays, and that's why I mentioned that in there. And like you say, if you see anything that is of particular interest to you, or you think there may be some questions, I'm available by phone or email at any time. You can contact me, and I can answer those questions or give you some additional information. The other possibility would be there's actually two more possibilities. One would be to get as much of the packet out as we could on Wednesdays, but please note that there would be substantial follow-up on a lot of stuff because some of the stuff we don't get in until late Thursdays or maybe even a couple hours before it goes out on Fridays. There's a lot of stuff that has to be done here. We would like to do a lot of research to make sure we have accurate information and the most up-to-date information. Or we could try to get it out on Thursdays. And sometimes we'll have packets that may not be as detailed, which could be gotten out earlier. But there will be sometimes, if you want a complete packet, I don't think that we can exclusively eliminate that Friday date.
Personally, I'd be okay if the packets go out on Thursday with the understanding there may be additional information that'll have to be added to the packet on Friday. I mean, that'll give you an extra day to look at it. Suzanne?
And I just wanted to say, for me, it doesn't have to be a hard copy packet. It could be the email packet, just so I can look at stuff and see what's there. And then we could keep doing the same thing with the final packet Friday, where I can flip through stuff and make my additional notes.
So Suzanne, you're getting a hard copy packet as well?
Yes, because I can't have the information on the screen and at the same time as the meeting. It's too hard.
Any other thoughts?
Oh, we could try that. For now, have the email agenda sent out on a Thursday and see how that goes.
Well, I can actually send the email agenda out on Wednesdays. And, you know, we can accelerate some things and try to move it up, and probably in a lot of circumstances, we can get it out on Thursdays. And that would give you an extra day for review, and we can try that and see how it works, and then we can comment and evaluate it here in a couple of months and see where we are.
Yeah, I just assume when we get the packet, we don't get it in pieces. Because ultimately what happens is if someone reviews it and a new document comes out, now you gotta re-review the document you already looked at, so. Shelley?
And the other thing is too, when we receive the hard packets, because I receive the hard packets, is, you know, we pay the police officer, whoever they are, to deliver them, and, you know, why make extra trips? So I would totally be fine with getting everything on the email and then the final on Friday to make notes and whatever.
Okay. Anything else on this?
Well, we can try that, see how it goes.
Okay.
All right. Well, we're past 9, but we're on to our last item here. City Council return to live meeting discussion.
Due to the onset of the COVID pandemic, City Council went to a virtual meeting format on April 6, 2020. Council previously discussed this decision and decided to keep the virtual format in place until the case numbers decline to a level to safely return to live meetings. At the January 25th, 2021 City Council meeting, Councilperson Urkel requested that City Council consider returning to live in-person meetings and discuss this possibility at our work meeting tonight. Included in your packet and also in your reports, the first graph shows data for antigen positive tests for the state of Minnesota. Antigen positive tests indicate that the COVID virus was detected and the person tested is presumed to be infected. This is included also in your report and in attachment 1. And while this graph shows a reduction in the increase of positive COVID tests, case numbers are still on the rise and still remain alarmingly high. The second graph is a graph that's furnished from the Anoka County Department of Health, and it's for the cities of Ham Lake, East Bethel, Linwood, and Oak Grove. These confirm the same statistics, that the cases are still rising. They're not rising at as rapid a rate as they were back in October, but they haven't declined. The third attachment in your packet exhibits a graph or a chart that shows the numbers and the actual increases per month numerically. And also included in the report is a graph that shows all the cities in Anoka County. All those are either showing continued increase in cases or a flattening out of the curve at the bottom, but they're still going up. So based on this information, staff has checked with the Northern County municipalities, Anoka County municipalities, the cities of Cambridge, Isani, and Wyoming, and found the use of the following city council formats. Blaine is going to a hybrid meeting beginning tonight. A hybrid meeting means city council members have the option of either being present in council chambers or logging in remotely. Spring Lake Park has gone back to live meetings. Ham Lake and Oak Grove have been live since March. They never changed their format. St. Francis is virtual. Linwood is hybrid. Cambridge is going back to a hybrid meeting beginning tonight. Isani went to live meetings on January the 18th. Wyoming is virtual and we're virtual. So if you look at that, it's somewhat of an even split with all those, with 40% being live, 30% being hybrid, and 30% being virtual. But since Oak Grove and Ham Lake didn't change their process, and you take the 8 that have changed several times, the breakdowns are 25% live, 37.5% hybrid, and 37.5% virtual. As I said before, hybrid meetings allow council members the option of attending either remotely or in person. Within the capabilities of our recording and broadcast equipment, hybrid meetings would pose problems with sound and video quality, have the same issues with the bandwidth for remote connections, and require an investment in equipment upgrades to maintain the current quality of the recording, live broadcast, and rebroadcast of our meetings. In checking with our city attorney, 8 of the 9 cities they represent are still virtual, with one of the 8 scheduled to go to a hybrid format effective tonight, and that's the city of Blaine. Issues relating to returning to in-person or hybrid meetings include the room capacity of council chambers. Based on the occupancy rating of council chambers, only 25 persons can be in the room at any one time. However, when social distance standards are applied to the room, the total number of persons is reduced to 20. Seating issues. To comply with social distancing requirements, only 4 council persons can be seated at the dais. 1 council person, city attorney, and city administrator would require floor-level seating. Audio quality. In order to give all council members the ability to hear and communicate with each other during a meeting, a dummy computer must be set up in chambers in order to show all in-person participants on the WebEx meeting. With this setup, we experience a sound feedback loop that makes all communications difficult. Correction of this problem would require the installation of a sound switch, which would have to be operated by our AV tech. Broadcasting issues. Our current setup only allows output broadcast from one source camera at a time. This would mean that the AV tech would have to switch between cameras each time someone new is speaking, which could result in a 3 or 4 second delay. Once we add that the already existing 1 to 2 second delay, we could experience for virtual participants, we're looking at a possible 6 second delay in the camera showing who is speaking at any given time. Cost. Our current setup would require a sound and or broadcast switch so that we could alternate where the sound goes for the recording is coming and add an additional camera output. Conservative costs for the upgrades to provide the minimal improvements for broadcast are projected to be at least $3,000. Regarding the consideration for return to live meetings, council should consider the following. While we are beginning to see a reduction in the rate of increase of positive COVID tests, these numbers are not declining locally. Additional information on the new strains of COVID could have an impact on more restrictive requirements for public gatherings in the near future. Even with a return to live meetings, council chambers can accommodate no more than 20 persons total under the current social distancing requirements. Utilization of a hybrid format for council meetings will create broadcast and recording challenges and could result in a degradation of audio and video quality that would affect those residents that prefer to observe council and commission meetings remotely. This time, staff recommends council discuss the health, broadcast, and executive order related issues associated with the consideration of return to live council meetings.
Hey, Suzanne, you introduced this matter last meeting.
All right, well, I'm just going to say I really have no interest in going hybrid, so all those costs are out the window. I really want to be back to normal meetings. I think they're much more conducive and the public wants us to be back to normal meetings. There are other statistics like hospitalizations are down 74% from December. But because of that new strain that's coming out, I'm gonna just say it's fine. I know I'm alone in this issue right now anyways. So I'm gonna say, let's just bring it back up in like 2 or 3 months and see where everything is standing.
Others agree to table this?
Table it for now with the, let the vaccines get rolled out. Let's see what happens with these new strains. I would love to be back in live meetings myself, but what can you do?
Yeah, I mean, I miss the live meetings. I miss that type of discussion. But I will say over the 8 months we've been doing this, that the virtual meetings have been getting a little smoother. And I honestly haven't seen any loss in, what we're trying to do as a council during these council meetings. So, I mean, if that was the case, then I think it'd be a stronger case to go back. But let's look at this again in a couple months. So, so that completes our agenda for tonight. Is there any last comments?
Just one more question on this COVID stuff. Jack, is City Hall still closed?
City Hall is closed to walk up public facing business. Any resident though that needs an appointment, call and we'll set up a meeting with you. So the main difference is it's open by appointment only though.
Yes. Have you heard anything from the state, from the governor of those recommendations changing to open City Hall back up?
I know that the peacetime emergency declaration that was extended to February the 12th will be up for reconsideration by the governor, and we'll know something a little bit more at that date.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you, Jack.
Jack, can I just add on something to that too? In the emergency management meeting today at Anoka County, they expect another big surge in the county in the next 6 to 10 weeks. So that'll probably tell us with this new variance that's going through. So they expect that it's going to go way up again. So.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
With that, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Jack, you take roll call vote, please.
Councilperson Mundell,
Aye.
Councilperson Harrington,
Aye.
Councilperson Beck,
Aye.
Councilperson Urkel,
Aye.
Mayor Voss.
Aye. And that motion passes. And with that, our meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.